Yields back is 1 second. The chair recognizes the ranking member for 5 minutes, Mr. Grijalva.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank to all the witnesses for participating today. Mr. Gama, let me just a quick question. Do you see in the portfolio of unleashing America's energy and mineral potential per the agenda for this meeting, do you see as part of that portfolio, unleashing portfolio, do you see royalty relief for gas and oil as one of those items that needs to be considered by Congress?
We believe in paying a fair share of royalties. Absolutely, we pay royalties. We're very proud to provide that royalty back to the American taxpayer.
So relief is not on the agenda from the.
No, no.
That's good to know because that will be one less item that we have to deal with. The other issue I was going to ask is, Ms. Johnson, and thank you and good to see you again. We've talked a lot about and the questions that have been directed at you, and I think you've more than informed all of us as to not only react, but the issue of environmental justice and that it must be front and center. My question is that all the impacts, health, lack of participation, systemic land use decision that leads to discriminatory practices at other levels for the communities that you represent and you speak for. My question is the economic issue. It's been brought up in every other conversation here, but let's talk about the economic issue and your experience relative to the communities that we're talking about and that you represent, frontline communities. What's that economic reality for those neighborhoods and those communities?
Yeah, I think that the economic reality is that we have higher health costs in those communities. We see reduced number of school days and work days associated with health impacts. We see environmental degradation that leads to lower property values. We see people not making a wage that is appropriate and sustainable. But on the flip side of that, I think that we see positive economic opportunity coming in this conversation that we are having about how do we ensure that we have a sustainable, affordable, accessible, robust energy economy. To do that does not mean that we forsake projects, whether they are traditional or clean, environmental processes, whether we are considering a traditional or a clean energy project. Again, as was mentioned, there are resources in the Inflation Reduction Act that we believe will provide staffing, that will provide opportunities to modernize and streamline our system and processes, and that we can get energy economic opportunities deployed in an equitable and just way at a proper pace, because we have invested in it in a robust way during the 2020, during the previous legislative session.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sandberg, I just need a point of clarification. You said that permitting reform should not mean undercutting our environmental standards, and I agree with you on that. But also in your testimony, speaking in support of TAP, America's Energy Act, you support that piece of legislation. But the bill expressly undercuts our most fundamental environmental standards. That's NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act. It weakens requirements for assessing environmental and public health impacts in many ways, and even worse, it would exempt numerous energy projects from the NEPA review. So while I agree with your statement I said earlier, I would respectfully want a clarification do you urge a closer look? The contradiction in supporting what is essentially the gutting of NEPA in one piece of legislation and the comments that you made.
Thank you for the question. I think there are ways to make common sense reforms to NEPA, and I think that working with the Congress, we have faith that the Congress can do that. And I think that the TAP Act is one example. There are others out there that working with you and others, we can find a way to streamline the process without undercutting, as you said, our bedrock environmental statutes.
A 2020 study, according to that 2020 study, that was 1 out of every 450 NEPA reviews are ever challenged in court. Do you consider that? Do you consider that a factor in? I know that it's been exaggerated to the point that everything ends up in court, and that people are that NEPA is a tool to slow everything down, which is not true. But 1 out of every 450, you consider that too much, excessive?
I think to meet our shared goals of accelerating clean energy deployment and the economic and environmental benefits that will come from that, that there are some things that need to happen to streamline the process for permitting
Does that
to
include
reach our
denying
goals,
people
shared
the
goals.
redress in court?
Pardon?
Does that include denying people redress in court?
No,
Which
sir.
is their right?
It does not.
You'll back them, sir. Excuse me.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair now recognizes the gentleman